You probably worry about money. I haven't seen your bank account, I promise. I don't know what's in there. It probably doesn't matter if studies are any indication. Let me explain. A number of studies in the last few years have looked at Americans and how much they worry about money and what's going on in their life or in the world at the time. Probably not surprisingly, they found that Americans worry a lot during financial hard times. One study done during COVID, right in the heart of COVID, showed that workers, people who had jobs, were almost 4 times more likely to worry about money than they were to worry about health. Now, I want you to just think about that for a second. There's this sickness going around the world. It's all over the news in the early stages. Nobody really knows what the extent of that is. And even then, the average person is 5 times more likely to be worried about what's in their bank account and what's going to happen than they are about their health. So that's no surprise. We worry when times are bad, but here's the flip side. Americans actually worry a lot when the U.S. economy is thriving. Another such study showed that more than half of Americans felt insecure or anxious about money, sometimes, often, or all the time, when the economy is thriving. In reality, compared to the rest of the world, we don't have a lot to worry about. Only 11% of Americans live in poverty, and compared to the rest of the world, most of us live in great wealth, comparably. And yet, another study showed that 50% of millennials, my generation, with more than $1 million, feared losing all of their wealth. 50%. 1/3 of baby boomers had, in a similar situation, had the same concern. Psychologist Arthur Brooks, in an article a few years ago in The Atlantic, writes this: "For millions of people, then, worrying about money is not a reflection of whether their basic needs are being met. In fact, this anxiety reflects deeper concerns that money can't solve." And that gets right at the heart of this morning. Yes, there's money concerns for many Americans, and yet it actually, the data shows, points to a deeper insecurity. The Bible would agree with that statement. You can join me in Proverbs this morning if you're not there already. We're going to start, as we've been going through this series, we've now been since the beginning of the fall. In September, we have been in Proverbs. We're going to start way at the end. If you've been here for this series, you know that we're jumping around quite a bit, but we're going to start, at least meet me in Proverbs 30. It's almost the last chapter. There's one after this. And so for those of you just tuning in, or in case you forgot, that's okay. Proverbs is a collection of wisdom that was written or collected by a guy named Solomon about 3,000 years ago, who God tells us was one of the wisest people that ever lived, the wisest besides Jesus. And so he wrote down, and God used him to write down this wisdom for us to help through everyday living in the way that God has ordered the world, God being our creator and sustainer. And so we've taken this book, we've separated this by topic. And so as we've been going through Proverbs, we haven't been going chapter by chapter, but we've been looking at different topics. And today, we're going to talk about money. But as we're going to see, it's not just about money. It points at something deeper. There are tons of proverbs that either talk about money and possessions, or they refer to money and possessions. And besides, if you got your note sheet out, you'll notice, I think this is the longest note sheet I've ever written before. There's a lot of points there. Trust me, there's going to be a 3-hour sermon, I promise. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. It's also, I think, probably the most verses we've ever looked at before. And so thank our tech team at the end. We're going to be flying through the slides this morning as we see there are a ton of proverbs, and we're not even going to touch all of them. I think it was Friday I got an email from, if any of you use the U version, it's the Holy Bible app. They just released a study from Ramsey Solutions. I think it's an 8-day devotional on what Proverbs says about money. So, if you're looking for something after today, you might want to check that out. The other thing is, Proverbs says a lot about money. We're gonna scratch the surface this morning. Before we microscope, though, let's big picture this baby. If we took all of these Proverbs and we added them up into one big piece of wisdom, I think it would be something like this: that money can lead to dangers or opportunities. It all depends on the wisdom of the manager. Money and possessions, it can lead to dangers. You might be aware of some of them. It can also, though, don't miss this, lead to opportunities. It depends not on money or the amount of money or lack of money, but it depends on the wisdom of the manager. In other words, money isn't inherently good or bad. The Bible doesn't tell us money's a good thing, money's a bad thing. It tells us the love of money is a bad thing. But money is what we would call amoral. Now, a few things I want you to see in there. One is that word wisdom. Proverbs has been all about wisdom. It gives us wisdom. It also tells us to look for wisdom. And so we're going to hit this theme again at the end of our time together this morning, that the wisdom is important. And that word manager hits at this biblical idea. It's a little bit in Proverbs, but it's all over the Bible, that you and I don't really own anything. We might have money and possessions, but we don't own it. God owes everything. We just manage it for him. And that's what stewardship is. And so depending on our wisdom, it can be a danger or an opportunity. I say this because often we see money in a biased light. We think it's good. This is the default position of all humans, right? We're born into this world. We think money is good. Possessions are good. We think it's going to bring us happiness. It's going to bring us comfort. And so we try to get more of it. We spend our lives chasing it. That's one view, but we can also go fly on the opposite end of the spectrum, and some would tell you that money's bad. We see greed in the world, and so it's inherently corrupting. But it's not inherently anything. It's up to us and how we value it and how we use it. And Proverbs is pretty clear on that. In fact, we get this great, and here's where we're going to start this morning, again in Proverbs 30. Proverbs 30 is one of a few at the end that's actually not written by Solomon. It's written by a guy named Augur. That's his real name, which, by the way, I think, I've never seen that one as a farm-themed baby name. Forget Case or Angus. How about Augur? Pretty good. It's out there if you want it. But Augur, he writes in this chapter, it's actually a prayer, Proverbs chapter 30. I'm going to zoom in at 8 and 9. We're going to take these one at a time. I want you to see what Augur prays. Here's what he prays to God in the middle of this prayer. He says, verse 8, "Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me," here's what he's asking God, "give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread." So verse 1 of this proverb, you'll see that this is a prayer. He's praying to God. He's asking for different things. He says, keep me from falsehood, keep me from lies, all good things to be kept from. And then, notice this, he says, I don't want no money. I also don't want all the money. But give me only my daily bread. Now, if that jogs something in your memory, that's a good thing. Daily bread is just simply saying, give me enough. In ancient times, you would have either go buy or you would bake your bread for the day, and that would be your bread. So if whether you made PB&J sandwiches or you did something else with it, you would eat that bread, and the next day you would make another one. And so he's saying, just give me enough for today. Now, why on earth, I don't know if you can imagine yourself asking for that, but why on earth would he pray this? Next verse, verse 9, he tells us his reasoning. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. He's praying for balance. He realizes that if he has too much money and possessions, he might think that he doesn't need God. I got this, I got it set. We see this danger alluded to often in Scripture. So he says, I don't want that. I also don't want to be too poor. Why? Because I might break boundaries and break my relationship with God. I might go steal something. So he says, instead, just give me enough. So Augur understands the dangers on either side, but he also understands that there's an opportunity. And so we're going to talk about this morning, and here's how I've decided to break this up, and this is the reason for this long note sheet. Again, we're going to go through this fairly quickly. I want to give you what I'm calling 4 characteristics of an unwise money manager and 4 characteristics of a wise money manager. And just so you know, we're clear, this is my composite. So Proverbs says more than this, but I've taken a few of these things and put them together. In other words, Solomon doesn't give us these 2 composites exactly. It's not like last week, if you were here, we talked about temptation, and we saw that he gave us 2, it's going to bother me. He gave us these 2 composites. So we have this, he gave us this temptress, this woman who's tempting you. It was kind of this composite temptation personified. And then he gave us this composite of Lady Wisdom. There's nothing like that. It's not the temptress and Lady Wisdom. There's not like Matthew Money and Henry Homeless. It's nothing like that. I have just taken these and I've put these into a composite. What that means is that you might look through this list and you might see, okay, there's some unwise things that I can relate to. Maybe I see some unwisdom in my life. There's some that I don't have, some I do have. There's some wisdom in my life. There's some that's not there. It's not like a person is all one or the other. And in reality, we could all use more wisdom in our money management. So here's 4 characteristics of an unwise money manager. Number 1, unwise money manager spends hastily. You can write that one down slowly. I'm going to tie my shoe here. So. Should have double knotted, but we'll see. All right. Spends hastily. In other words, an unwise money manager spends money like it's going out of style. That would be a modern way of saying it. Hastily is the Solomon way of saying it. Most translations, or many, use this word. Here's 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. A better word here, and some translations say this, might be impulsive. Being impulsive about money leads to poverty. You know the drill. I think all of us, not all of us, but many of us when we were kids, oftentimes as kids, money has this effect. It's burning a hole in our pockets, right? We have it and we want to spend it. We're hasty. Notice we'll get to this later, he contrasts it with having a plan. The diligent have a plan, they have a budget, they have an understanding of it. But hastiness is going to lead to 2 things. It leads to ruin. It also compromises our integrity. Get-rich-quick schemes often lead to taking shortcuts, including moral ones. Here's another proverb. This is Proverbs 28:22. It says, "The stingy are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them." So this word eager here, or it can be translated hasty. The word stingy, also in that proverb, has negative connotations. It literally means, or is translated, an evil eye. They're stingy with time and money. It leads to morally bad choices. And so the opposite advice here, the wisdom, real quick, is to slow it down. Have a plan. Work the long game. Realize that with money, not being hasty, but being slow can have benefits. I very specifically remember, I was like in high school, I don't know what kind of class, probably a math class, learning about compound interest. The first time I ever saw that compound interest chart. You ever done that one where like Timmy's 18 and he puts $2,000 in for 5 years, and then Tommy, he's like 25 when he starts and he puts in 2,000, and Timmy rocks it. Compound interest, there's a huge effect to slow it. That's what your teachers are trying to get you to do. Play the slow game. Some situations are ripe for hasty purchases. Black Friday, by the way, is the enemy of slowing it down. Here, this is on sale. You need this. You didn't know you needed it, but here it is. You need to buy it right now. It'll never be cheaper than this. Maybe a rule is in order. I'm not going to make a big purchase, for example, unless I've thought about it for 30 days. Slow it down. Hasty purchasing is unwise. Second characteristic, the unwise spender spends vainly. Number 2, vainly. Chases pursuits that are empty. So the idea here of vanity, and this is one of Solomon's favorite words, is we're chasing something that's empty. A couple verses before the one we just looked at, Proverbs 28:19. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. So notice here it's contrasted with those who work hard will get there later, and then those who follow worthless pursuits. I say it's one of Solomon's favorite words if you've ever read Ecclesiastes, also probably written by Solomon, the teacher. And as the teacher is teaching, he's trying all these things, and he concludes, if you know the book, that everything's vanity or everything's worthless. That's the phrase, vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. So here he's saying that those who chase vanities or spend in vain will have, again, poverty. Unwise money managers spend their money on worthless things. You know the feeling. All of us probably know the feeling. Why did I purchase that? There's a name for it. It's called purchase regret. It's the term for a purchase that you later wish you wouldn't have made. Studies aren't particularly kind to impulse purchases. For impulse purchases, things we buy without thinking about it, some studies show 56 to 64% of people who make them, or when you make them, regret that purchase later on. This actually is getting higher, they think, because of social media, and all of a sudden, you're just getting hit with all of these things that you can buy, and you just a click of a button, you purchase it. Another study shows that 82% of home buyers experience some sort of regret later on about that purchase. What's the antidote? We'll get there in a little bit. We save and plan, Solomon tells us. Unwise characteristic number 3. The unwise manager spends money they don't have. They spend money they don't have. We'll spend a little extra time on this one. Admittedly, this is a hard one because debt and spending money we don't have is ubiquitous within our culture. It's so just normal, and some would say something that has to be done in our culture. I just saw a little clip of Dave Ramsey calling debt, quote, the most aggressively marketed product in the history of the world. We see debt everywhere. It's become a normal part of life. And yet, and I want you to see this, and there's several Proverbs about this. Proverbs is pretty clear about the wisdom of debt. Let's look at one of them. This is 22:7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. So a few things that Solomon's telling us here. First, he's saying, and it's hard to argue with this one, those who have material means usually call the shots. That's most of us say that's true. But then he says the borrower is slave to the lender, and so he's discouraging borrowing. So if wisdom is practical knowledge for living a well-lived life according to the way that God has created us, this is a reminder that in that ordered world, we need to be careful about how we use debt. Now, I know, again, this is ubiquitous in our culture, and so some of you immediately are going, yeah, but, and I hear things like this a lot, you can't do blank without debt, right? You can't own a house, especially today. It'd be incredibly hard to purchase a house without debt of some sort. You can't own a business. You can't farm without debt. And some of you know way more about that than me. I'm not going to fight you on that one. But here's the thing to remember, that just because it's so ubiquitous in our culture, it's so common, doesn't mean that it's suddenly wise or the proverb is untrue. And so we need to balance that. So a few thoughts on that. The first, and I think this is really important, actually probably should have talked about this later in this series, but I want to make clear that something being unwise, remember we have wise and foolish in Proverbs, isn't the same as something being sinful. So just because something, the Bible's saying, hey, this isn't a very wise decision in practical life, doesn't mean it's a sin. In this case, having debt isn't necessarily a sin. The wisdom is saying there's consequences to it. Well, what's the consequence? Here's one of them. We just saw it, that the borrower is slave to the lender. In other words, the consequence is it's a burden. There's a burden to debt. And for those of you who have maybe student loan debt or have had student loan debt or credit card debt, you know that it's a burden to everyday life. And so we have this wisdom of Proverbs reminding us to be careful. And by the way, it's because it's wisdom in the Bible, it's not just a math problem. Sometimes when we're talking about debt, we do the math problem. Well, hey, or we tell ourselves it's really wise somehow. If I get this interest rate, it's only this interest rate. Somehow this debt suddenly becomes wise. And it's missing some of the warning that's coming with what Solomon's saying, that there's a burden we have in life. It creates other issues. Now, a few thoughts on this, because most Americans have a decent amount of debt, is to be careful not to throw out the wisdom of Proverbs, not to minimize what Solomon is saying, but also let's be careful in minimizing the debt. You might be in a situation where you have to for some reason. Okay, how do we minimize that? And how do we pay it back swiftly? In fact, Proverbs gives us that wisdom as well. Here's Proverbs 3:27 through 28. We're told, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you when you already have it with you. In other words, notice the principle here, saying when you owe somebody something and you have it, don't give it to them later, give it to them right now. So be careful, minimize the risk, and pay it back as soon as possible. Characteristic number 4, then, last one on an unwise money manager, is tempted into sin. Is tempted into sin. We've seen this a little bit already, and we've looked at a couple verses from chapter 28. And we've learned that the eager will not go unpunished, the stingy make bad moral choices. And so again, while money is not inherently sinful, it can cause us, if we're not careful, to sin. Here's one example of that. This is Proverbs 21:6. A fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. So you get the picture. Someone's making a fortune. Fortune could be an opportunity, but how are they doing it? With a lying tongue. So they're lying in order to get their fortune. In other words, what money's done is the money wasn't evil, but it has caused somebody to compromise their morality to get it. Warnings like this are all over Proverbs. One of them, this is in chapter 20, it says something like there's a person who goes and he's negotiating and he says, bad, bad, and then he goes away and boasts. The idea of that proverb is that there's someone and they're negotiating and they're going, maybe it's a car, and they say the engine doesn't run really well. I'll give you this much for it. And so they make the deal, and then they go to their friend and go, hey, guess what I just got? Look what I pulled off. Right? And today we might see a situation like that and go, hey, that person's just being shrewd or a tough negotiator. But what Proverbs is pointing out is that if it's causing us to sin, that money and possessions it's not being a tough negotiator, that's actually lying. A fortune made by a lying tongue. And so we need to be careful of that line. So wherever there is money involved, we should ask our motives and what shortcuts we may be taking. That's where this unwisdom comes in. So these are all the snapshot of an unwise manager. Now let's talk about the flip side. And some of them you're going to see are just the flip side. Here's 4 characteristics of a wise money manager. Number 1, they work purposefully. A wise money manager works purposefully. In other words, they work hard and intentionally. Now, this is such a common theme in Proverbs. This is actually going to be our topic next week. So we're going to finish out this series, at least for now, talking about this. I just wanted to touch on it here because it's very intertwined in places with this idea of money, very much a part of biblical teaching on money and possessions. Here's Proverbs 20:13. Do not sleep or you will grow poor. Stay awake and you will have food to spare. Again, pretty straightforward picture that we're getting. Someone who loves sleep, and so they're not working hard, and they're going to come to poverty. But stay awake, work hard, and you will have more than enough. People talk about a Protestant work ethic. I think Christians should be known for working hard. Work shouldn't be everything, but it should be a part of the equation. Characteristic number 2, a wise manager gives generously. They give generously. In other words, though possessions of money can be an opportunity, they hold on to them. Even when we have it, we're called to hold on to it loosely. Hold on to it loosely, not with a tight fist, but with an open hand. Here's Proverbs 11, 24 and 25. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Now, I just want you to see about the logic of like the world. This is completely opposite. You give freely, you would think if I give freely, I'm going to have less. They're saying God's economy, that's not how it works. The one who gives freely gains even more. And whoever withholds, you'll have a lot if you withhold, right? No. Comes to poverty. God rewards, and not just monetary, and sometimes not monetary at all, but God rewards in different ways. There's a blessing for those who are generous. The one who hoards might think that he's better off, but he's not. A godly principle from Scripture is the one who is generous will be blessed. And remember that word blessed, as we've seen it in Proverbs, often means something like happy. Have a joyful life when we're generous. Or here's another one. Proverbs 3, 9 through 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim open with new wine. And so here's the same principle. Be generous, and God smiles on that, and God blesses that. I want to point out, for those of you who are familiar with Proverbs 3, the location of this. You might know right before this is the well-known verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. A few verses later then, as there's this like pivotal point in Proverbs, remember it's one of these big chunks of teaching from Solomon to his son. He's reminding his son right off the bat, in trusting in the Lord, you're going to be generous. And it is trust. It's saying, hey, I'm gonna give this money that I have, I'm gonna give something, or possessions that I have, but I'm trusting that Lord will take care of me. The Lord will take care of me. It's important for us to be generous, especially as Christians, one who have been saved by the generosity of Jesus. And God will reward that. And no, it's not, hey, if you give money, you're going to get money back. That's what TV preachers will tell you, and that is not in Scripture. That's not always how the blessing comes back to us, but God will smile on us. I've known a lot of people, I've never known anyone who gave so generously and then they found themselves in poverty. Like living on the street because they just gave too much money. The reality is that when we give, God takes care of us. God rewards that. And so as you're getting this picture, I want you to see this generous or this wise giver is someone who's both using what they have as an opportunity. We're going to see in a minute, saving some of that, also giving. It's not just hoarding, but it's giving. At the same time, then number 3, the wise money manager saves diligently. In other words, a wise person saves for a rainy day. So notice there's these two, they're not opposites, but they go together. So here's a proverb, chapter 6, and then some verses. I'm not going to say it. You're not going to get me, kids, but here we go. Proverbs 6, he's talking about the ant here, and then he says this as he's thinking about the ant. It has no commander, nor overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. He's praising the ant here, and he says there's no commander, he doesn't have anyone telling him what to do, and yet what does he do naturally? He stores his provision in the summer. He stores it for later. And he's looking at that ant and saying, that's how a wise person lives. That's how he does it. This is his advice throughout. By the way, it's not distrust to save. If we don't give, it might be distrust in the Lord, but it's not distrust to save. It's wisdom. A godly budget will include savings. And I know for some of you, hearing that word budget is like hearing the word root canal, right? It's like not something that's very pleasant. But a budget is a practical way to do what God's calling us to do. And then number 4, lastly, a wise money manager experiences contentment. So they'll have this characteristic of contentment. They don't experience contentment, by the way, because God gives them everything. It's not I'm content because I got all the possessions of money I need. But because they trust God, because we trust God, we will experience contentment. You know this. Here's Proverbs 10:3. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry. The Lord will not let the righteous go hungry. He will not let you down. And so in those moments, deep breath, trust. So again, it adds to this picture. The person who's a wise money manager is not greedy, doesn't hoard, can be generous with their resources, but doesn't worry about it. And here we have again, Augur saying, Lord, give me only my daily bread. Give me only what I need for today. As I'm trusting you, I'm experiencing contentment. In you, we experience a rich contentment, which in turn will lead to wise decisions with money. So money presents us with either a danger or an opportunity, depending on how we use it. So what do? Well, here's Solomon's advice for us. Don't seek wealth, seek wisdom. Don't seek wealth, right? Wealth can be, you'll get it. You might get it. It will be a danger and opportunity. Don't seek it, though. Seek wisdom. This is a little bit of a nod if you remember back. I'm sure you don't. But our first message in this series is we talked about wisdom. And the big idea of that message was the greatest treasure on earth isn't wealth. It's wisdom. Don't seek wealth, seek wisdom. Here's what Solomon tells his son in Proverbs 8:10-11. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. The her being wisdom, Lady Wisdom. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. The most valuable things have nothing compared to wisdom. Why? With wisdom, you'll be able to handle any money situation. And so it's, instead of thinking, man, or even looking through these characteristics and thinking, here's my playbook. What we need more than anything is to think less about money and possessions. The culture helps us so much think about those things. But to seek instead wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, whether you have a lot or a little, if you don't have wisdom, it will destroy you. And so seek wisdom. Now, as we looked at wisdom in that first message, we saw that seeking wisdom will get us three things. They were all P words. The first is perception. In other words, knowledge and understanding. So we have knowledge and understanding. If we focus on God's wisdom, when it comes to money, we will have knowledge and understanding. Number two, we'll have protection. Protection from the dangers of that money poses, from sin. And we'll have a pathway. We'll have a way to go. Here's how we should live when it comes to money and possessions. But here's the most important thing it'll bring us. Wisdom, we've said this over and over again, will bring us closer to God. And so if we're seeking wisdom, we're ultimately seeking God. That's always where we want to be. Remember, we keep being told, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In other words, we get wisdom from our relationship with God. Or Proverbs 3, we talked about this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. In all things, we should look to God. That's affirmed in the New Testament by Jesus' disciple Peter. Here's 2 Peter. Not very often we talk about 2 Peter. 2 Peter 3:10-13. Peter writes, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare." Nice and cheery start. And then he says this, "Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and speed its coming. That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth where righteousness dwells." So we have this apocalyptic picture, right? I hear people talking all the time. Do we live in the end times? What, is it? I don't know. We get this picture of all the things falling apart around us. And what's Peter's conclusion in that? You can't take anything with you. Eventually, everything's on this earth is going to fall apart. Listen, I've been in lots of hearses before. I've never been in a hearse that's being followed by an armored vehicle. right? Like someone's bringing their money with them. You can't do it. And this is what Peter's saying. Listen, you can't. It's going to melt. It's going to fall apart. There's going to be the destruction of everything. So what do? He asked that question. What do? We live holy and godly lives. He's saying, follow God. Look to him. Look to the new heavens and the new earth. And in looking to the new heavens and the new earth, we're looking to Jesus. Turns out Jesus is more valuable than rubies, gold, silver, or even wisdom, technically, because Jesus not only gives us wisdom, he is the wisdom of God. And Jesus, don't miss this, is the greatest example when it comes to wealth. Here's what Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 8. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you, through his poverty, might become rich. That Jesus was rich. He was with God, the right hand of God the Father. He was in heaven, but he became poor. He became one of us. He had the heavens, and then he came to this earth that's going to fall apart. He became poor so that you, through his poverty, might become rich. That through the gospel, what Jesus did, we can have true riches one day in heaven. And it's Jesus who borrowed a proverb when he taught us in a very pivotal moment to ask for our daily bread. Jesus do you ever think about that? In the Lord's Prayer, he's reminding us to ask for to ask what Augur asked for. Just give me my daily bread. Be content with what he gives us and with him, because he makes us oh so rich. You might become rich. You will become rich in Jesus. Jonathan Clements was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. In fact, he was their personal finance guru for a few decades. So in a publication that's geared towards money, he was the personal finance guy. Between 1994 and 2015, he wrote more than 1,000 finance columns. Like almost, a few a week, he wrote these finance columns, told people how to deal with their money. He pounded home two ideas. Two ideas were in most of his columns. The first is he told people to take care of yourself, plan on living past 90. He once wrote this: most of us will live an amazingly long life and should not worry so much about dying young. This was his idea. He pounded home over and over again. And then number two, he said, save accordingly. You're going to live a long life, plan on it, so save for it. So his life was understandably shook up a little over a year ago in May of 2024 when he was experiencing balance issues. He went to the doctor thinking it wasn't much, and he got a devastating cancer diagnosis. There was a golf ball-sized tumor on his lung. It had spread to his brain, to his liver, and elsewhere. The doctor said there's nothing we can do about it. They gave him 1 year to live. A little while later, a colleague at the Wall Street Journal was interviewing him, writing a column on his life. And as he gave that interview, you could see him not only grappling with what had happened to him and shook up, but he was doubling down on his advice. He said this, as he knew he didn't have long to live. He said, the number one thing money can do for us is to give us a sense of financial security. And the way it does that is to not spend it and to hang on to it. So he doubled down. He said, the thing we need most in life is money. A month and a half ago, Jonathan Clements died at the age of 62. The reality is, though most of us follow the advice very naturally, that money will give us everything we need, the truth is, though money can do a lot, it can be an opportunity. It can't do everything. And it especially cannot save you. Only Jesus can do that. So instead of seeking wealth, seek the wisdom of God, Jesus Christ himself. Will you pray with me? Lord, you tell us in your word that this morning, in a way that has nothing to do with what's in our checking account, nothing to do with what's in the 401k, nothing to do with how much stuff or how big the house is, no matter what the situation is, we this morning, if we have given our lives to you, we are rich. And it's all because of that example, your son Jesus, who had riches in heaven, but came down, took the form of us, human beings, lived a life in relative poverty so that we, in our poverty, could become rich one day in new heavens and the new earth. Lord, we just thank you for the gospel, which is at the heart of everything we do and believe. And I just pray that among the other areas of our life that we need to apply the gospel to, that we would apply it to how we handle money. As Solomon reminds us, money and possessions can be an opportunity or they can be a danger. It's not about what we do have or don't have. It depends on our posture towards you. And so, Lord, may all of us lean in to that relationship with you. Lean into your Son, Jesus, that you would give us the wisdom to know how to hold things on this earth loosely and be generous, and know that our real treasure isn't on an online account. It's in heaven. And we will one day experience in its full. We thank you for the gospel. We thank you for our time together. We pray these things in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.